Let me welcome the panel members that we have: Mike, Cem, Shashwat, and Emma, right, who have gracefully agreed to host and talk to us this panel around GTM strategy and how do you take it from GTM, just strategy, to real practical sales. Okay. Before we kick off, I am going to request each of our panel members to briefly kind of introduce themselves so we know, right, what do they do and why we have them here. Trust me, they are very well equipped to be on the panel, but we would like to hear from them in their own words, right, of what they have done in this space and why we have kind of brought them in. So, Mike, would it be okay if I request you to go first?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much. Happy to be here. My name is Michał. I go by Mike. I'm a Polish Canadian. I go by Mike because it's easier for everyone that way. I am a lawyer by education experience, turned marketing agency owner, turned consultant for consultants. It's a little bit of a meta. My specialty is in building and growing and scaling consulting operations, specifically around consultants who run their businesses solo or with a very small team. And the kind of bumper sticker or promise that I have is I scale those consultants to $100,000 per month in an efficient way. So a lot of profitability and productized operations. That's the gist of it. I am a geek and a nerd at heart as well. I'm an Eastern European, so obviously every Eastern European is a hacker. So I'm a bit of a hacker as well. But all jokes aside, yeah, I do play a little bit with AI. Who isn't? And we use AI in my space as well a lot. There's a lot of conversation we've had with Emma about AI, usage of AI, critical thinking, AI helping or not helping, and things like that. So very, very happy to be here, and would love to share some thoughts about how consultants can scale.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike, for agreeing to be here, and thank you for sharing your time. Next, could I request Cem, please, if you could say a couple of words and introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much. Also, it's nice to be here, really. And also, we had some talks beforehand, so it's great to be with you guys, many smart and ambitious people. My name is Cem. I am based in Lisbon, and I am German. I am this hand because I'm half Turkish, so don't be surprised. And why am I sitting here? I'm actually always wanted to become a consultant, Mike, but more finance focused or management consultant, until I realized that it's really boring and really not my case. So I started a career in sales, which was at the beginning also quite boring, but at some point I really fell in love with it. And I just love creating meaningful connections, meaningful relationships with customers. And this in the core is what I really love about it. And what makes me equipped to be here, I also use AI almost every day. Right now I'm working for a Swiss startup, which is a fintech software as a service startup. We are currently on our way to 1 million ARR. So still quite small, but on our way to become like a scale up in the future. And I am solely responsible for the sales there. So from first contact with new customers to onboarding them myself and doing all the customer success. So yeah, I'm excited to have a chat about it.
Awesome. And guys in the audience, right, if you are a startup, if you are starting off new, right, Cem and Mike are the folks that are actually helping businesses grow their sales, right, from the ground up, defining their GTM economics, letting them scale. Like, for example, Mike has helped businesses scale to $100,000 a month, right? So pay attention to what is being said today, because you are not going to hear these kind of strategies and insights again. Next, can I request Shashwat, if you could come on and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chandramouli. Hi, everyone. My name is Shashwat. Everyone calls me Sash because it's easier. I'm from India, but I live in New York. I've lived here for 15 years. I had a 20-year career at Microsoft, 10 years in customer engineering, 10 years in sales. And the latter part of the last decade was purely in sales, selling to, I started with media companies, all Fortune class media companies. And then about 8 years, I was selling to financial services. I had experience selling to both very large Microsoft customers, as well as scale customers, digital natives that we were trying to sort of onboard on the Microsoft technology. From a GTM perspective, I have experience in both bringing Microsoft's GTM strategies and sales strategies to market, as well as partnering with Microsoft's customers to bring products to market. That was super interesting for me, where I work with very large strategic accounts that build brand new products and services on Microsoft platforms. And we created GTM partnerships together to bring that to market for like large enterprises. For the past 2 years, I have been consulting. And 6 weeks ago, I launched my own platform called The Rift, which is targeted towards helping people learn and scale themselves with AI.
Thank you, Sash. And remember, Sash is a member of the AI Fellowship, and
Yes.
I have been enjoying the time, right, collaborating with Sash. We have done few experiments and interesting projects, right? But we'll keep that for some other time.
Yeah.
And finally, Emma, if you could come on, and we have to thank Emma for putting this panel together, right? Because Emma was instrumental in bringing on Mike and Cem as participants in this panel. So Emma, if you could come on and please introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I believe that I do see a lot of names that would recognize me and that I recognize as well, but I'm happy to do a quick intro. Thank you so much for having us here today, Chandramouli, and thank you for hosting this session as well. And as mentioned, I know both Mike and Cem, and the reason as to why I know both Mike and Cem is that they are supporting me in running our company that is called Lumiera, that I'm the CEO of. It's a boutique advisory firm. We focus on responsible AI strategies, and Lumiera, as the company that it is today, that I'm running as well with my co-founder Allegra, has been around for approximately 2 years. Before that, I made a transition from being a lawyer and a diplomat into the field of entrepreneurship, where I worked with a bunch of different kinds of businesses, and where my specialty is also natural language processing. So I would say that the main thing that you are going to learn from me today is how many challenges there are about go-to-market, and I'm happy to raise it, and happy to also have input from the experts that we have on board in terms of getting some different thoughts and perspectives on how to go about these different challenges. Because if there's one thing about the AI landscape right now, is that it's moving very fast. And since I started working with AI projects in 2019, it's barely recognizable. So also knowing how to navigate that as a company, as a leader individually, but also knowing which frameworks and tools there is to access in terms of doing this is something that I'm looking forward to pushing all the 3 other participants a little bit extra on. And I would also just like to add that if there's anyone in the audience, I would love to know both if you're working more on a service-related type of business, or if you're looking at a product-related business, you can add it in the comments. And of course, also if you have additional questions, or if you want more information, or if you have this one pain point that you cannot seem to get over, it's quite likely that the rest of us has had it as well at some point. So feel free to share as well.
Thank you, Emma. And I should also mention that Emma and her co-founder, they also have a really nice talk on AI that they host regularly, which is also interesting to attend. So, if you folks are interested in something different, a different perspective on things, then I would recommend you to attend that. Okay, so guys, thanks for the introductions, right? Before we jump into the panel discussion, why don't we each set the stage by defining what go-to-market strategy really looks like and what it means? Okay, so maybe Mike, if I could, ask you to start, right? How do you define go-to-market strategy?
Well, it's a good question, because I can bet every single person here will have a little bit of a different approach to this. For me, GTM is all about making sure that what you have to sell goes into the right direction in terms of finding a way to position your product or service. And whenever I say a product, that also includes a service. So whenever you have a product to sell, you have to make sure that product has traction, and there is an efficient way to give it to the people that need it. And the way I like to look at it is to think about every business and what is the purpose of existence of the business. All the businesses exist to solve a problem, right? And we have a tendency as the entrepreneurs and people who are inventing things to fall in love in our with our products and services. This is my baby. This is amazing. This is great. These are the features, right? But I think, just based on my experience, a lot of people are forgetting why this thing should exist in the first place. And so part of my approach to GTM, to go to market, is to understand, okay, is there a market for it? Are there enough people who have the problem that you're trying to solve? Are there people who, this is the kind of, Venn diagram where we have people who do have a problem, and then we have a solution for the problem. But there's a third element to it, right? Part of the product market fit is, do these people want to solve the problem? And are they willing to pay for it? Because, and I'll give you a quick example from my family. My dad is not a fit person. And Emma is laughing because I think I told you this story. My dad is not a fit person. He's very unfit. And I tried to convince him to go to the gym. And so I approached this from a perspective like, well, he sees all these blockers to go to the gym. So I remove all the blockers. I said, Dad, here, I bought you a membership for a year, and the gym is right across the street. And he goes, oh, that's nice, but I want to go there. I just don't want to. I feel comfortable with who I am and how I look like. And so no matter, my solution is perfect. It's great. I remove all the obstacles from him going to the gym. And the only thing he has to do is just put his shoes on and go on the other side. I pay for the membership. Anyone needs a membership in Poland, it's still active. But he just does not want to go. He does not want the problem to be solved. So for me, GTM starts with with analyzing, like, are we actually solving the right problem? Is there a problem to solve? Can we solve this problem in the proper way? So that's what GTM for me is.
Awesome, man. That's interesting because, yes, a lot of people would have amazing ideas, and a lot of founders get sold on the fact that they have an amazing idea, but they don't realize that they are not selling it to themselves. They are selling it to their customers, which they need to take it to. Awesome. That's a great start, Mike. Sash, you have worked with Microsoft, right? And you have seen this happen practically. What's your take on GTM strategy? What do you think is really good GTM strategy? What is the core of good GTM strategy?
I agree with Mike. So one, if you're solving a problem, the why of it matters the most. And when you're creating go-to-market strategies with why and then the how we take it to market, that's a great way of creating alignment between teams. And I'm also sort of learning that as I go with my own startup. Everybody wants to learn AI. We all know that. We all know that everybody needs to learn AI. How do you convince people that, hey, it's okay, it's not that complicated, we just have to, how do you convince people to have that patience? So one of the things I used to work with Microsoft's customers when we did partnerships of going to market for the new solution was, let's define the problem statement very clearly. And first, sometimes you might have a solution, but you have not defined the problem statement yet. And I think that was very important in creating alignment, especially in enterprises, because large enterprises going to market with a B2B multi-million or billion-dollar product, you have so many teams working on so many different things. And if everybody's not aligned to the same goal, it all falls apart. And that's why starting with the why to me is super important. What's the problem statement? Define it clearly. Everyone is aligned, and then you kind of figure out the how.
Excellent. And that kind of segues me to Cem, because when you are a startup, right, the why of it can shift very often. Right? You started your startup with a different idea. You realize when you hit the market that things have moved, right? How do you, Cem, look at go-to-market strategy? What do you define as the core of go-to-market strategy when you are just starting out, right? When you are not sure how the response to your product would be from the market?
Yeah. I think this is a great question. Like Mike said, I think everyone has a bit of a different approach, but I see like a pattern here, because for me, really, it comes down to really two main factors. First of all, it's really the ICP, everyone was calling, right? It's the ideal customer profile. So let's take me, for example. I work for a fintech, right? It's for fiduciaries and accountants. Does it make sense for me to call the CEO who works in a marketing agency? Absolutely not. So this is why it really starts with that. Who is your ideal customer? Who do you want to target? And it's not really about like, oh, he is between 40 and 50 and it's this geography. No, it goes deeper than that. It's the emotions, right? It's the personality. Also, what challenges does he have, right? What is his desire? What are his goals, right? They are different goals. A CFO in a startup has a completely different goal than, for example, an accountant in the same company. They have completely different goals, even though they work maybe in the same team or in the same company. That's why you really need to nail this down as explicitly as you can. And then for me, this is a great exercise I did with my team. After you did all that, you do a long day at work test. So you think about your ICP, you have all this information now, and now you think, okay, my prospect comes home from a very long day at work. He has this problem and he thinks, oh, wow, I would solve it the best if I had X, Y, Z. And there you insert your product. And now I come to the second part, which is the value proposition, right? So what pain do I solve with my problem, with my product or my service, right? Because in the end, this is sales to me. This is why I fell in love with it. You're solving a problem. I am basically just a guy with a headset who helps someone get from A to B in the best way. So for me, really, it's about nailing your ICP and having the right value proposition. This is my approach for that at the startup.
Awesome. Yeah, yes, you are right. There are different slightly versions depending on how you are placed and the kind of organization you are in. Right. So excellent. And Emma, right? The governance usually comes last, which is why I kind of kept you last for this question. But yes, it's the most important thing, right? You need to make sure that your strategies are aligned to the organization, right? And you need to make sure that you are falling within the legal framework. So given that you have the background and the understanding of it, how do you define GTM strategy and what do you think is the core?
Well, I think that everything that is relevant for GTM has essentially been said in terms of what it is and why we need it. Something that I would like to highlight is how sales sometimes sort of gets a bad rep in a sense, but when it comes down to it, it's really a matter of listening to your customers and talking with them. And everything that has been said so far also seems quite simple, right? Like you have your USP, you have your VP, you have your ICP. How do you actually know their pain points then? And how do you get down to that thing that really keeps people awake at night, or that makes them dread going to work, or that is maybe such a big pain but they've done it their whole lives, or they've done it for the whole time that they've had this specific job, or they've been dealing with this specific problem for so long that they might not even recognize it as a problem. How do you get to know them? How do you communicate with them? How do you listen to them? And I think that that is, in a sense, something that I would just like to add, maybe not to the definition of GTM or sales as such, but maybe more to just add some nuance to this conversation, that listening is incredibly important. And that is also where a lot of entrepreneurs or company leaders tend to get a little bit lost, because it's very easy to focus on the product and the technicalities of the product. It's very easy to think about like the pricing models and all these other things. But if you don't have that very first thing pinned down in terms of understanding who you're actually selling to, then everything else kind of doesn't matter as well.
If I can add something to that, sorry, because I
Yes,
think this is a great point, and I think that you guys at Lumiera do this already pretty good. I think nowadays what's so important is content generation, right? Because there are so many customers who are not even aware that they might have this problem, right? That's why they're outbound and inbound sales. If you create content like newsletters or videos or success stories, they see, okay, wow, there is a solution actually that could improve my business. So they, by themselves, might think, okay, I actually have a problem. I could be way more profitable, way more efficient. Let's talk to this person. And in the end, it's just human to human, right? You buy from a person. And I think at Lumiera, you do this already. I mean, you have the newsletter, right? You said that the conversion there is also quite good. And yeah, you're very active on LinkedIn. So I would add this to the GTM strategy, right? Be a content creator, be a brand, you know?
And I think, Emma, one of the things you mentioned, knowing your customer is so important. One of my jobs in Microsoft was a data and AI sales director selling to financial services. But financial services, I had a list of accounts that were hedge funds, data providers, analytical providers, financial services providers, and banks. I had one set of products to sell, but their problems were all different. A hedge fund's problems, solutions, and a bank's problems are very different. So understanding your customer really, and just listening and really trying to start with their sort of needs. And then in a B2B environment, figuring out where the budget is super important for sales. And in the B2C environment, it's very different, because then you're trying to understand what customer behavior is. So understanding your customer, I think, is very, very important. And one of the things I always believe that if you can solve a problem for somebody, you really don't have to sell them anything. You know, they see the value.
I think it's important to still also see the difference between who's the end user of your product,
Yeah.
and that's one part of the marketing, and then who's actually paying or who's actually buying your product as well, right? And then if we're looking at B2B, your solution might go towards the end consumer, but you're selling to an enterprise, and then your marketing has to kind of cater towards those two ecosystems in a way, right? So you're selling to someone else, but someone else is using the product, which is very important as well. I think it goes back also to the fact that a lot of us are super, super excited about what we build, and we cannot forget about the fact that there's someone else who has to be even more excited about the product or service that we have, which is the market, right? Nobody cares how many features you have that you love, you build, and how many hours you spend coding this thing. If there's no value and there's no way to solve a customer and user problem, right? And so that's a very important piece. And to Cem, what you said about being a creator, I think that's super important now as well, where the personal branding is a sort of a digital currency that we have. And building that currency as we grow is so important, because now you guys are building this one product, but maybe in a year or two you have another startup. And so if you build a goodwill around your own personal brand, then that goodwill will follow you, and then you will have an easier way in to sell and present the new product as well. So I think that's super important. There's a bunch of different things of what needs to happen so that you can be a good creator. We can maybe talk about it a little bit later, but I think it's a very important topic.
Absolutely. And I would kind of hark back to what Emma said a little while ago, right? Is we all know, right, what are the things that we put into a good GTM strategy. But then that begs the question as to why do so many organizations fail, right, at GTM strategies and converting to sales. People have amazing ideas. People come up with amazing products. And more often than not, you see that either they are not executing it well, right, or they are not able to generate sales. So Emma, let me start with you, right? What do you think are the major pitfalls that people need to look out for?
Oh, there's a bunch, to be honest. When it comes to earlier startups or younger companies and bigger companies, I would also say that the ways of approaching this would be a bit different. I can only, to be honest, I would say that speaking from my own experience is probably where I will add the most value here. So one of the things is essentially looking at how much are you communicating with people and how much are you trying to push your own product or explain your own product versus listening to them and the problems that they actually have. So that is a very big one. The second one for AI, I would say specifically, is building on trust. So actually recognizing, and Sash, you also mentioned something around this, how much sales is actually about communication and explaining the value and taking the time to listen to the clients and which problems that they have. And it's quite easy sometimes maybe to get overexcited about the product that you're selling and instead sort of trying to push it either by not taking enough time throughout sales or also not categorizing the leads correctly. So just knowing that you are not for everyone, and that's perfect. That's great. The more you think about who you are for, where you add actual value, and you can add that confidence and definition to the product that you're selling, the more you can also stop wasting people's time, because that's essentially what you're doing when you're trying to sell your product to a customer or to a lead that is not relevant. So that is a big one. And then secondly, taking the time that it needs, being confident in the fact that your product actually solves a good problem and listening in to the feedback that people have. And that is not going to be the type, it's not going to be feedback where you say, hello, can you please tell me what is wrong with my product so that I can improve it? People don't move like that, right? The way that they move is either they buy your product or they don't. And if they don't buy it, there's a reason for it. So testing different things and seeing where you find that fit and seeing where people actually relate to the way that you describe the problem or the way that you describe the solution, or a couple of things where I would say you need constant adjustment for this, especially in a field where things are moving so fast.
I think especially in smaller companies, like for example me with a startup, for us at this stage, it's so crucial to have like strategic customers, you know, where they help you really adjust your product, adjust your value proposition, your messaging, everything. We just had like a little rebranding because we saw that the market we are addressing is actually kind of too small for us to really get let's say the hype, right? Like more funding as well, be more attractive for investors. So what we did is we talked to our biggest customers, the ones who've been with us for 2 or 3 years, and we asked them, okay, how do you work right now? We looked at their whole process, and then we discovered like 2 or 3, let's say, bottlenecks that we could actually solve with our product if we add another feature. And this is exactly what you said, Emma. I mean, you need to listen to your customers because they know what pains they have, and you might use that for your advantage to improve your product or your service. And yeah, I think this is also the first, overlap between sales and product.
Right, and it has a lot to do with positioning as well. I think the way, especially when it comes to services, like you think about, like if I think about my services, what I do, like I am the product. I'm a consultant. I am the product, and then how I package myself and how I present myself can be different for different use cases as well, and that can change with time. So, Cem, what you were saying is like you needed to adjust based on the feedback that you guys got, right? So it's the same product in the center, but like how you position yourself, how do you present the value proposition is important. And another thing is that sometimes people think, I mean, Apple was great at making us believe we have a problem and they have the best solution for it, but they're masters at what they do. Yeah. But in general, like we need to understand the fact that like it's really hard to fix a problem for someone who doesn't understand they have that problem. And something that Emma already mentioned is like a wake up in the morning call, like what keeps you at night, 2 a.m. at night, right? Like why can't you sleep when you run your business? And you have to figure that out and solve that problem and use the words and the communication that fits that narrative that someone has in their heads. Because if you use words that nobody understands, it's just going to go above their head. It will just not stick to them, right? So I'll give you a quick example. I was working with a client and he said, and I asked them like, what do you guys do? And they're like, oh, we we set up accounting software. I'm like, I've never heard anyone who would wake up in the morning and say, oh no, my QuickBooks are not set up properly, right? Like that's not something. What I heard though is like, we're never paid on time. It takes so much time to, that is and then, so you can come in and say, okay, we're going to help you be paid on time. How do we do that? So that speaks to your problem. How do we do that? Well, we do that by optimizing the setup of your accounting software as one of many other things that they do. But that is the difference between the communication and how we position ourselves. It's the same product, same solution, same service, just different packaging of it and different delivery of that. I think that's super important. And I think a lot of, especially in the tech industry, AI, a lot of people just get too focused on the features and the cool number of code lines and stuff like that, and not necessarily on the thing that it does for us. The tool, you go on the website and you just read a blurb about like technicalities. I'm like, how does it fix my problem? Does it record the meetings or not? Does it join the Zoom call? Does it not? You know what I mean? Like going back to the granola discussion earlier.
And Mike makes a great point. That kind of flexibility in enterprise sales, we call it tap dancing, because you have to move according to what your customer wants. Another example, I had a customer that they were one of the world's largest agricultural supply chain companies, and I never worked with such a company before. So I started learning about the company. My contacts there, my stakeholders that I had relationships were chief data officers, CIOs, CTOs, but we were bringing to analytical product to market with them, like Microsoft and them, which was for farmers. We had to go out and understand what the farmers' problems were. How do you get them to use technology? What's important for them? So our conversations, like for me, it was like, oh, wait, the chief data officer has probably a dozen problems to solve first before they create this application, which is going to help their customers that are farmers. So we had to kind of shift our thinking a lot and start from what's the user journey they want their customers that are farmers to experience. And then the problem statement changes, and then sort of your approach changes. And I guess that's super important in startups, but this is kind of an example where in enterprise settings also you have to sort of pivot and be flexible. I think if you're not flexible with how you position your strategy, be focused on the customer problem, that's kind of where GTM strategies or even sales strategies start falling apart. You got to be able to tap dance, like we used to call it in enterprise sales.
Yeah, and Sash, I think you have experienced this firsthand, right? So I think you would be the right person to speak of this portion of the discussion. Is AI is impacting every portion of our work, right? Yes, development, tech, definitely impact, but sales, right, is also something that is seeing impact from AI.
Yeah.
How would you define AI is reshaping GTM?
Well, it is pretty incredible. Now, I'll take an example, pre-generative AI. Large companies like Microsoft and Microsoft's customers used a lot of machine learning ML modeling for predictive analytics with GTM. So everything from sales projections to churn prediction, there was a lot of tech that was used. Now, that tech was very expensive to create and manage pre-generative AI. And now it's just opened that space up where everybody has access to AI to do that kind of even direct stakeholder selling with AI, and use AI smartly to position yourself differently. Just like Mike had mentioned, you're the same. You're selling the same thing. We're selling the same value. How do you now? I think with today's AI and pre-generative AI, machine learning, it just opens up the scenario so much. Where I'll give you an example. When I was a sales, I managed scale accounts for like 18 months in Microsoft, which were 50, 60 accounts. Some of them had no relationship with customers. So that's like cold calling, figuring out who I find in this company who's going to take my call. What did you do? You go on LinkedIn, you search, and that was hard to do. You spend a lot of time doing that pre-generative AI. And you will call 6 people in one company before somebody answers the phone and tells you, no, I'm not the right guy. That is now easier. You spend, if you use AI smartly, you can run these kind of individual sales programs faster, better. I think that is very powerful. That's very powerful for anybody who's in kind of individual sales right now. I think there's a question here from Shavi I was thinking about as well. Like, she's asking, what advice do you have for salespeople who are navigating uncharted territory with around AI ML space? Use AI ML to understand your customer better and find who is the right person that is interested or has a problem you can solve. That for organizations was more expensive with pre-generative AI ML. Now it's very ubiquitous. Another example comes to mind. New York Tech Week, I went to a Perplexity event, and they did a GTM panel discussion with Unified GTM. It's a AI GTM product which uses Perplexity's Sonar to create sort of targeting opportunities in a B2B scenario. They are very accurate. It's a very expensive product. It's like the cheapest subscription is like $5,000 a month. But they were talking about how they have opened up opportunities for cold targeting as well as warm prospecting in so many ways that they couldn't pre-generative AI. And that comes down to one thing, data, right? Now the data is out there. You can do so much with sort of UI, AI as an individual and as sales teams and startups or enterprises. Enterprises struggle with this a lot because enterprises have a lot of inertia. They have a lot of processes that have to move together, right? Large enterprises. So I even struggled with that a lot, where it was hard for me to kind of figure out my own thing, but I had to figure out my own thing in a way that could scale. So startups definitely need to be more flexible, can be more agile. Even enterprises, you can use AI to actually understand your customer better, find the industry, and all of that is much accessible now with generative AI. Like for $20 a month, you get a sales consultant and an enterprise strategist, and it's all up to you what you can do.
I think there's so much value in this information that you just gave, and it's so good that you have this view on AI and sales, because this time of spray and pray where you just send out thousands of emails, it's over. Like you have all these great email tools, right? But it doesn't give you any benefit because the prospects don't care. Like what you want and what you get now with AI is high precision leverage, right? You can use the ChatGPT. I mean, I built myself a GPT that I can insert my prospecting information that I got for the right target, and it crafts me a beautiful message that is so personalized that the prospect is going to answer me, and I know it for sure. This is what AI can give you. It can give you relevance, because you, Sash, you probably know this as well. Emma, Mike, you probably as well. Chantabuli as well. You probably get thousands of emails a year, cold emails, and you will not open them because they are irrelevant. Yeah. But you will find the relevant messages all the time.
And I think one thing I want to talk about, the human aspect of it, is cold prospecting is a very uncomfortable proposition, and especially when you have in B2B environments, when you're managing dozens, 2 dozen, 3 dozen accounts, it is very uncomfortable. It's a human kind of, oh man, I got to send this email. I don't know if it's going to land properly or not. I think AI can give you that confidence to gain a little more comfort, because you can go in well prepared to have a discussion that makes sense to the person you're talking to. That to me is a game changer. Like Cem, you mentioned, like LinkedIn messages. I would send 100, 150, 200 LinkedIn messages every week, 2 weeks to like cold prospect. Like for example, if I had a Fortune class company in financial services that was a Microsoft customer, they have 120, 150,000 employees. I have to find stakeholders in each department to create what we used to call groundswell. How do you create value for a product in that big of an enterprise? You have to find people in all different divisions, marketing, sales, and try to talk. Man, so many cold messages, I would get like 1% return, and then they will say, I'm not the right guy. So that is improving with AI. It'll give you that confidence to be a little more comfortable, I guess.
Even with calling, not only mailing, right? In my previous job, I used to make 50 calls a day, cold calls, right? If you ever make cold calls yourself, you know that you will get maybe 1 or 2 good conversations in a day, if you're lucky, right? Now you can go, like you say, you're well prepared. Like you have, like it's like ammunition you have in your belt. You can shoot your ammunition because you're so prepared for this call. If this guy picks up, you can answer with relevance.
Yeah. And Chavi, to answer your question, that's how you earn trust. Like when you understand a customer's business and problem and just listen before you even big out a brag of products that you're here to sell. Just listen, just hear them out. The CDO is going to give you a dozen problems. The chief product officer is going to give you a dozen problems to solve. And once you start connecting those dots, they'll understand that, okay, this guy understands my business. So that's how you kind of gain trust.
For me, the AI is helpful with, what's important, especially when we're starting as a startup, is the speed to market. Is quickly validating whether there's a product market fit, and AI gives you a lot of tools to do that way faster than we used to. And as a couple of examples directly from my space, and I sell 100% of my sales are coming from LinkedIn, and all my clients, we also teach them how to sell on LinkedIn, and we sell 6 figures per month on LinkedIn. And I say that to just build a context of like what's possible. In the past, we would have to have a group of people who would work in behind the scenes to do that. These days, you can leverage AI to really understand, like you said, like really understand who are we talking to, and like to be, Shyam, to your point, to be relevant as well. I think and then it allows us to analyze any common denominators when it comes to our conversations, whether that's a phone call, whether that's a Zoom call, whether that's a DM, exchange DMs. We can just put all those notes in one place and ask AI to summarize and find the common denominators. What are the typical objections? What are the typical challenges? Things that we can use either directly in a sales process or in the positioning, in the marketing that happens before, right? One thing I would just say is that we have to be careful with using AI in terms of so that we can actually be relevant and actually be the human operator of AI. It cannot be, there's so many tools out there that are automating everything these days. And it's removing that human to human interaction and connection. And it becomes this very, like this white noise. Like, we have the, what do you call it? a blindness for the ads on the websites, right? We no longer pay attention to the banners on the website. And we slowly see that on LinkedIn as well. The comments, the content on LinkedIn itself that is being generated by AI, it's just we're not seeing that because it's just all the same. So what needs to happen is that the operator of AI, we are the specialists, we are the human beings. This is a tool, this is a machine we can use, and that shouldn't change, in my opinion. So we cannot just say, hey, AI, do everything for us, because it will just lose the touch. And someone challenged me the other day, 2 days ago, when I said, well, the report, because I publish a report on LinkedIn, and I said, my VA will send you the report. And he was laughing. I was like, yeah, VA, why I would automate this thing for you? I'm like, yeah, but that would completely miss the point of having a conversation that I have right now with you on the other side.
Yeah.
And I would lose the insights from it as well. So AI is great with a small caveat.
True.
Emma, do you want to chime in? You are the AI leadership voice. You've been featured as that, right? So what are your perspectives on GTM and AI?
I think there are a couple of things that I would just like to sort of clarify in this discussion when it comes to GTM, because now we're moving a little bit like around like the whole scope or the full all the phases of GTM, where you have the research phase, right, where you just like kind of sort of like find out what's going on in the market, what value does my product have, where are the genuine needs, where's the money, because someone's going to pay for it as well. And then you have the whole strategy as such. So actually setting up a marketing plan or a sales plan, and knowing what your priorities are, and then moving on to execution, right? And these different phases as such, I believe that AI can sort of help us in all of these different phases, but it's also for the sake of just knowing where we are moving in this conversation, also thinking about where are you using AI to power what exactly. So that's just something that I would like to keep with me as we continue the conversation. I think especially in the research phase, of course, like AI helps so much, but then again, it's supposed to create the space for you to also get more connected to the market as such. So if you take time away from doing the actual reading and actually writing and summarizing these things that now with Gen AI we can do very easily, and we can access vast amounts of data that we couldn't access before, what are you going to do with the time that you've saved? Well, probably talk to real people and probably check in with yourself as well in terms of what do you want your product to do on the market in general, and is there something in this and something in the data that these AI tools are presenting to you that doesn't make sense, or that is a little bit too streamlined, or where you could find other sources of information. So that is the first thing, where you can have AI support you in many ways, but where you also need to look at, where do I, as someone that knows my field, as an entrepreneur that also connects very easily with a lot of brilliant people, something that AI cannot access like that, how do I create space for that? So that is the research phase as such. Developing a marketing plan as well, or sort of like a business plan, sales plan, whatever you want to call it, a strategy. I would say that always thinking about the way that you want to move and looking at things that works for other people, speaking with them, also getting a bit of a sense to us, how do we want to move as a company? That is not always, doesn't always have to be the most efficient approach, doesn't always have to be the main thing that makes the most money or brings the best success. But for us, especially in Lumira, because this is a quite personal project, right, where we also care about how technology is shaping the future of the world that we're going to live in, how are we selling and how are we executing on a strategy that doesn't align with our values and that doesn't align with who we are? That's not going to work.
Yeah.
So again, you can have AI help you, and I love having, especially like simple Gen AI tools, questioning your strategies. So rather than coming up with a full sort of template strategy that anyone could access, don't have AI write that for you.
Yeah.
Think about your own genuine thoughts about how it would make sense for your brand and for your product and for you to move, because you are the one who's going to work with it for a long time. And then have AI completely just be quite harsh on you.
Mm-hmm.
And question, where are the gaps here? What have I missed out on? What are the alternative strategies? What are the alternative moves? So for the actual strategy as such, that is a great way to use AI, I would say. And then in the execution as such, as in like, how do we sell? How do we talk to people? How can we create personalized solutions? I know for a fact that both Cem and Mike are much better at this than I am. And you've also sort of like tried and implemented different tools to try it. The only thing that I would recommend is, when it comes down to it, you want to double down on your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to check yourself, because when it comes to sales and when it comes to talking with people, that is also where we tend to get a little bit scared. So we actually have to check ourselves in terms of the discomforts that we have. Are we just using AI now because that is going to have me not talk to this person that I know is going to be a hard sell because maybe we haven't sold to their type of company before, or maybe they are going to be a lawyer just like me, and like lawyers, we know that they tend to be extra risk adverse and extra sort of like double down on details that no one else cares about. That doesn't mean that, and Mike, you're laughing because I know that you're feeling the same thing. Also lawyer background. So we also have to check ourselves because discomfort in this sense means growth. And it means that we might get better at finding the values of our products. It might mean that we find ways to improve also what we're doing. And if we're using AI for that, and if we're sort of backing out of the conversations that might be a little bit tough, we're not going to learn. And then we're also not going to have anything to automate.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Like, I think I agree so much in so many different levels where you have to use AI to sharpen yourself and your kind of story rather than use it as a shield. If you use it as a shield for things that are uncomfortable to do, it probably is going to make it very impersonal, and then you lose that human connection. Sales is very relationship driven. Go to market based on partnerships is very relationship driven. So using AI to fill the gaps, like you said, Emma, is the right way to do it. And that also takes some practice, patience, and discomfort of interacting with AI in ways that, like you just described, like make AI your harshest critic. I've tried that. It's not easy. It can be quite harsh, but you get good feedback about not just what you've written, but how you write. So using it in that way is super important.
And I think Safar is adding something super good here as well in terms of being consultative instead of being aggressive. And that is also maybe just a general mindset to have where we misunderstand sales, I think sometimes, or where it's not has been communicated well. Like essentially, it's not a transactional thing where you give something and the other person pays for it and that's it. Like it's a matter of helping someone that has a problem. They probably know their own problem much better than you ever will. But you will probably have the knowledge or the product that can help them move in a better way in terms of solving this problem. So also approaching it more as like, we're going to be partners, we're going to be friends. Like I'm looking to support you and I'm doing this out of generosity as well, not just in terms of finding like a fit where you can sell something without that necessarily helping. I think it helps conversations if we're going to get back to this thing of discomfort and the discomfort around sales, like actually connecting with each other.
Yeah,
I think it goes back to the reasons why companies and business exist. We exist to solve a problem, and your job is to understand whether the other person on the other side of the screen or whatever has the problem, whether you can help that person. And if you think about selling as that discovery, really, I'm discovering whether that is true. Do you have the problem? Do I have a solution? If I do, I'm going to present this to you. Because, and for me, the mindset shift was like, I was scared to sell, and everyone is like, not everyone, but a lot of people are super uncomfortable about selling. It was easier for me to sell someone else's product or service than it was mine. There was something around like, oh, I don't really trust maybe myself. I could sell anything else. But then my sales coach, he said, well, if you were a doctor and you're walking down the street on a sidewalk and you see someone bleeding, they have a problem, and you have a solution, you are a doctor, you cannot just walk past them and pretend you don't see them bleeding and like, well, I'm really scared to say I have a solution for them. I'm going to let them bleed because they probably should reach out to me. They know I'm a doctor. Maybe they don't, but I'm a doctor, so maybe they should. You know what I mean? You're actually making a disservice to them by not saying, hey, I can see you have a problem and I can solve this, and it's going to cost you money, obviously, because that's my business and that's what I do, but I have the solution for you. So if you think about sales as that discovery to understand, are you bleeding? Right? Sorry for the dramatic example, but like, are you bleeding? If you are, like, I have a Band-Aid for you. I know how to apply this Band-Aid as well. And another mindset shift as well was like for me to understand, and that's is to treat the sales as a conversation again. Like just you're sitting at a bar in a lobby, hotel lobby, and you have someone else next to you, and you're genuinely curious about what they do and how they do things. Like, oh, you have a business, cool. What do you sell? Interesting. Just be curious. Understand whether there is a problem. If there's no problem, I mean, that's okay, cool, great, that's your peanuts. But you know what I mean? But if there is a problem, drill down on this a little bit. I think too many people just focus on, when it comes to sales, they focus on the tactics, on the script of the call, of the problem agitate solution, on the other, methodologies, and like, persuasion and all these other things. Those are important tactics to squeeze the last drop of the lemon. Yeah. But in general, understanding whether there's a problem, do I have a solution, presenting that solution in a normal conversational manner, showing as a servant to them in a way, I think that is the way to go, and that removes a lot of that pressure as well.
That's a good point.
Right. Sorry, did you have something to add? Okay. So we are not going to be endorsing anybody, but I would love to know from each one of you, right? What is that one AI tool, if taken away, would impact your GTM or your sales strategy today, right? Which has become an integral part of your work or your GTM today. Each one of you.
Just one.
I was going to say just one.
You could put more, but at least one.
Insert your favorite LLM. That's it.
And it's so hard to choose one, and there's so many wrappers at the same time, right? We're all using the tools that are using we know they're using the engine. Like for me, the everyday go-to is ChatGPT for just, it just has so much information about me. If I ask it to roast me, I just go cry in the corner because it knows so much about me. And then I use Claude as well to help me a little bit with content. And I use a bunch of different, like Granola is an amazing app. I use a tool called Whisper Flow. I'm not sure if it's AI powered. I'm pretty sure it is, but it's an amazing tool for like dictating and transcribing. So those would be, if those were gone, yeah, my life would be way harder. I would have to rehire people to do the work that the $15 per month tools are doing now.
Yeah.
Okay. Who's next?
I have to really also go with the LLM for sure. I mean, especially you start using it day to day with your prompts, right? And then there's this one point when you start to create your own GPT for specific purposes. Then you actually enter a new phase, right? And for me, this is it. I did this for the LinkedIn part, like the social selling part, but then also all things like follow-up emails, right? I have this AI note taker. I take this transcript and I have this beautiful GPT for me where I just paste the transcript and it just writes me a perfect follow-up email for a meeting, because I mean, 70% of my business day consists of customer meetings, and I don't want to lose track of any one of them. And one non-negotiable for me in the sales process is you will get a follow-up email on the same day. It doesn't matter if our meeting is at 6 or 8 p.m. You will get a follow-up email, and this just helps me get this done in a minute. And if I had to give that up, I would lose so much time, and that would be really a bummer.
Okay.
For me, I think I use ChatGPT a lot. Now I've used ChatGPT so much for both my businesses. It has so much context. I can't go away from it. But there'll be some days I can't get anything done with it. And then I move to Claude and get things done over there. So it's kind of like both. But a lot of my business operations and individual automation now lives on Make.com. I think if you take Make.com out of my workflows, I'd be lost. I'm sure there are other tools that they can do the same for you, but I rely on it heavily. Like almost every time I have to do something for one of my businesses, the first question is, can I automate it with Make? And if I can, I'm going to do it. So that kind of sort of personalized automation is, I've realized in the past few months, has become quite embedded into how I work.
Yeah, it's true, actually. You are the Make.com guru, Sash. I agree on the fact that the small automations that might not seem to be a big deal, but it's sort of keeping so many small things together. That's a big one, but that's not one tool. Well, we use Zapier, and Make is a common one as well. So that would be one thing. For me, my LLM of choice is Claude. We're building a lot of artifacts and different projects there that are helping us. I also do believe that running a business with a lot of sensitive information, the clients that we're working with are super important. It's extremely important to feel safe with the information that you're sharing with these tools, and especially when it comes to different wrappers and tools that people are just putting out that easily. You don't know what they are built on, and you don't know what kind of agreement that they've signed in terms of making sure that data is protected. So that is also a way for us to make sure that the value of our business remains intact, because ultimately you don't want to create lots of solutions that seem efficient, but in the long run, they actually undermine super important things such as trust, for example. So yeah, I would shortly say like Claude is a big one, and Anthropic as a company are building their solutions in a different way than this. I also appreciate the sensibility that they have with language, because that helps, especially when writing in many different languages. Except for that, the main thing that I would be so sad actually if this was taken away from me is the meeting summaries. I think my capacity in terms of being able to have so many meetings every day and still be able to pick things up and to be fully present in the meetings as such is knowing that if I miss out on some detail, or if there's something that I know that I want to follow up on, I'm not going to disconnect just because I have to take a detailed note for it, because Granola or some other transcription tool is doing that for me. Even though I do always also have my my actual notebook with my pen because it also helps me process my thoughts. Having that balance between the two is super helpful as well. And I'm well aware that we're running over time as well. So maybe we should round things up, Chandramouli. What do you think?
So we have plenty of time. We have another 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if the Luma invite says.
Okay. Yeah. No, we kept a little bit of a buffer. So yes.
So maybe we could also, if there are any questions, I think the audience has been quite engaged so far, but I bet that you're all also.
There's one question.
I think, right, let's take a few minutes for each of us to tell us. See, we have discussed about what could go wrong, right? We have discussed about the tools that we can use to leverage. I mean, while saying what could go wrong, right, all of you have also spoken about some strategies. But if you were to give a clear, focused strategy of what are the few things that you would insist or you would say are the top things to bear in mind to make sure that your translation from GTM strategy on paper actually translates to the sales in the ground. And if you have a larger enterprise team, then what would be your message to the GTM strategy to make sure that, say, it translates into proper sales? If you could cover that, and I think that we can jump onto the question.
I'll add one, and then maybe we can go around and add one from each. We have different perspectives on it. In the enterprise space, one of the biggest things we always try to do is alignment. Everybody has to be aligned on the same goal, which is basically starting with the customer and working backwards to your product or whatever you're selling. That became very useful and important in the SaaS world. Pre-SaaS world, selling technology was very different. You sold technology which was updated once in 3 years. You come back, you renew contract, you sell, you make money, you go away. SaaS was tricky. It was value that had to be proven every single month, and incentives were sort of structured that way. So having a very clear goal that everybody is aligned on in large enterprises, marketing, sales, business strategy, business operations, all of these teams is very important. And also being flexible on that, not being rigid. Like, you have to sort of move with your customer, really understand who you're talking to within the customer, and appeal to their kind of problem statement. And I think rigid go-to-market plans or strategies probably have more likelihood of getting stuck or failing than if you're open to things, try different things, pivot, and always maintain trust in the process with your client. That's super important. Because if you lose that trust once, it's very hard to get it back. And in B2C sales, I always say keeping a customer is costs nothing. Acquiring a new customer costs money. So you have to build that trust with your existing customer base to keep your bottom line.
Awesome. Emma, do you want to go next?
I mean, what Sash just mentioned is really, it's true. I would say that it's a matter of, as we started this conversation, once you have a strategy, it's a matter of action, and that action very much boils down to having real conversations with real people and being able to actually listen to the pain points that they have.
Awesome. Cam, what do you want to add?
Yeah, I think what's very important, maybe to add that more the tactical level, is to have a real structured sales process, right? To have a real clear sales process. You cannot just create a GTM strategy and then just go out there and do whatever you want. What helped us a lot is to really, when I started to say, okay, what's the first contact we make with the customer? What is the desired outcome that we want to have in the end? How do we get there, right? And we narrowed down to basic 3 steps, 3 meetings, where we define the outcomes of the meetings, where we always set a next meeting where we plan X, Y, Z. And this is what will help you a lot, right? Just structuring your day-to-day, I would say, and your sales process. And just gives you the lead also in your deals.
Awesome. Mike?
I think just to piggyback on what Cem said, and actually in the context of everyone else's comments, what is important for me is to really understand, like, why are we doing this GTM thing? Like, what's the point? The point is not to, like, because very often we focus on the metrics, and sometimes those metrics don't matter, or they're vanity metrics. Like, how many leads do we get? Yeah, you can get a lead for $1 or 50 cents, whatever, if you just target the wrong audience or the wrong geography or whatever. Like, who cares how many leads you have? What is important is the end goal. We're trying to sell this product or this service. We're trying to serve this market. Are we actually doing that? So not being too caught up in the cogs of the machine of GTM and funnels, and looking at, like, how many, like, I'm responsible for this piece of lead generation or demand generation. I'm going to focus on giving as much as possible. Sure. But then the sales team will not be able to convert them because they're not the right people, right? So you're inviting the wrong audience to the wrong pot. And so that is very important to, like, keep monitoring of, like, what is actually happening, and are we still chasing this the right Are we still going towards the right North Star? Has the North Star changed? Are we on the right track? Constantly going back to the fact, like, what is the goal? What are we doing here? Are we still on track? Because again, we can just catch ourselves just running and being busy. And sometimes we need to slow down, stop, and look at the data, look into the mirror, and say, like, are we actually going the right direction? That would be my final kind of statement on this.
Awesome. And actually, what you said, Mike, relates a lot to the question that we have from Bhuvi, right? She's talking about how do we ensure that we listen only to genuine concerns and, kind of block out the noise in customer feedback. So anybody in the panel would want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I read that question. There's a couple of interesting things. One is very tactical in sales, and I think Cem would understand this. It is as important to disqualify a lead as it is to qualify one. And that's basically cutting out the noise. And in your setting of sales, that could mean anything. So listening to the right, not the right people, not the right problems, right conversations, having the right conversations is super important. But having all conversations is hard for one person, two person, small teams to scale. So disqualifying something tactically scales in enterprise, we always used to say. And that could be something like where you're talking to somebody who has a problem, but hey, he's not making the decision. He's not even connected to somebody who's signing the check. All right, we'll talk to that person, understand the problems, but that has to lead somewhere. So I think following that kind of trail is important and tactically. Product-wise, I think of one example where Microsoft 10 years ago, we formed a financial services sales team to bring financial big banks to the cloud. And we were like, okay, these guys are regulated industries. They don't want to lose their data. Today, it's common. Everybody's on the cloud. So we had to really understand, okay, listen to them. What are their problems? And they started with lawyer talk and regulations and data privacy. And we were talking to the product group very closely. If you solve this problem, it's going to affect majority of the industry, not just one bank. All banks have this problem. So helping qualify those problems in terms of those signals as, is this an industry problem? Is this a problem that all kinds of my customers have? Qualifying and disqualifying leads and problems like that is super important. The only way you can do it is to have conversations and listen. Just listen, figure out, do your research. And that's where AI comes in today. You can get a lot of knowledge by sort of researching with AI on that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, go on. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, regarding the disqualification and qualification, this is so important. And anyone who wants to learn a bit more about this, there's a beautiful qualification metrics called MEDDIC. A lot of people use it as a sales process, which is wrong. It's actually just a qualification metric that you can use. And there's a book about it. There's tons of information about it. If you want to set up your sales process, sales org, whatever, use this as a guideline. It will help you. And then regarding the product side, we just launched a new feature in our company, right? So I work closely with our product guy. And what we did to begin there is to really, when we got customer feedback, is to have an insight board to really figure out what is this insight, which problem will be solved, right? And what does the customer get out of that? And then you really have to see, does this only happen to one customer, or do 50 customers have that same problem? And if 50 of those customers have that problem, then you might just found some gold, right? And then you really need to capitalize on that. And then you can really redefine your value proposition for that. And then, like, as Mike already said before, you want to sell benefits, not features.
Yeah.
And then on that note, I think very important, yes, to absolutely gather the feedback and have statistical significance of that as well. Like if you get a couple instances of people complaining about something, that's probably not a big deal. But if that becomes a problem, then obviously you have to pay attention to it. Now, at the same time, you need to remember, going again back to the North Star, like, what are you doing? You can be at a position where, because of that feedback, you would have to completely recreate a product for that audience because it's no longer what they want or what they need. But the question at that point is, are we serving the right audience with the right product? Do we want to redesign the product towards this audience, or are we really 100% sure, based on our data from the past, for example, that this product solves the problems, just these people are not good users of the product? Or maybe the market has changed and our product no longer serves this market the way it used to, right? Now we have AI, and then a lot of people are moving away from using VAs, for example, towards AI. And then now, the whole VI agency space is very, much disturbed. Same with consultants, like AI is disturbing a lot of industries, right? But so the question is, like, is it the market as a whole changing? And so do we also need to pivot? Or is it an instance of, like, we're just getting this feedback because of this market segment that is telling us this is wrong or this is whatever, and then we do not want to serve that audience at all, And for that reason, we'll stay true to our core concept and the North Star we had, which is going to go after someone else. So there's quite a few things we have to take into consideration, because the customer is not always right, right? In the service space, for sure, but it's not always true. And again, Apple would say that even stronger. They don't even know what they want.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, anybody in the audience, if you guys have questions, please, raise your hand, and then you can unmute and ask the question if you have it. Okay, Sukhdeep, go.
Yeah, hi, thanks. It is a great session. Thanks a lot, for this opportunity. I wanted to ask Mike, and it goes right from where he started about his dad, right? So it's like, so there is a problem. Your product is solving a problem, but the customer does not want to get the problem solved. Now, what do? Do you just disqualify the lead, or you figure out something?
Well, I guess the question is, there's two things that we need to understand here. This is not a good fit for the product you're selling, right? This is not a good fit. I can't force my dad to go to the gym. I cannot push him, I cannot drag him like, Dad, we're coming, and then I'm going to drag him across the street. I can't do that. And even if I did, I'm not going to achieve the goal that I want. Again, my point in running my business, in my case, I'm scaling consultants to $100,000 per month. If you don't want to be scaled, okay, yeah. That's about it. Now, at the same time, if I keep getting, if I have an assumption or a hypothesis about I think this is a product I want to sell to this audience, and if I keep getting a negative feedback and nobody's buying, then there's probably something wrong either with my offer or with the audience. So it's the typical offer market fit, right? So then you have to ask yourself the question: am I trying to market to the right audience, or am I marketing the wrong thing, right? And then goes back a little bit more, if we go into kind of theory of business as well, what is chicken or egg kind of question. If I have a product, I would then have to push this product on the market and find the people who would want it, or do I build the product for the market that has the problem, right? Which one is better? Which one is easier? But to answer your question directly, yes, I would say this lead is disqualified. I mean, I'm not gonna force them to buy my stuff, especially in the service area. People will be dissatisfied if they come in to buy, a tomato pasta, and you say, "Hey, comes gonna be tomato pasta," and you give them, a creamy pasta. That's completely, they'll be dissatisfied because you kind of force them to do something that they didn't want. So that is an immediate disqualification in that sense. At the same time, I would be very clear to a point of being polarizing in telling and in my positioning, saying who I am and who I work with, so that I only attract the people who will resonate with the message that I have, and I'm not going to get a person on a call that is not a good fit from that perspective. I hope this is helpful.
To add to that maybe as well, sales is also about asking hard questions, right? So in this moment, you can also just ask this person, what is wrong? Is it too expensive? What are you missing? And these people will give you an answer, and from that you will learn and improve.
Yeah, I think I was going to say the same thing. If you've kind of found a problem, but there's not enough reason for somebody to buy, there's probably a problem behind that problem. If you can ask the questions like Cem said, to understand what's actually the blocker, maybe that's the problem you need to solve, and then you can help them get to this space where they're ready to kind of move forward with a sale or whatever. That's one. The other thing is, I had so many, I would have clients that were competing with each other. And it was a very difficult kind of dynamic to sell to two competitors, right? Because one competitor is, I want market share. I want to do this with you, Microsoft. The other competitors are like, I don't know, maybe we're doing this thing. It's kind of cool. They were probably not aware of their competition. It's not my position to go say that, but it's all about sort of having and bringing an understanding of the industry as well. One of the things we did as financial services salespeople was understand the market. And if you can bring in that understanding of the market and point out signals that they don't see yet, that could help. So that helps identifying. Now, I can't go in and say, hey, Mr. VP in a bank, I know more financial services than you. No, I don't. But I know what financial services customers are doing with SaaS. And I know what problems they're kind of solving. So, and also there's a very delicate conversation to have when you're talking competitors like that. So you have to sort of always be the trusted advisor rather than the kind of sales guy going in. So that sort of is one approach I would take to this.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Zafar, you have a question. Please go ahead.
Hello, guys. Very interesting session. Thank you for organizing this. Maybe my question is regarding, because I think we have our members here are from different countries. Maybe one question to all of you: what are the biggest cultural barriers you have faced? For example, Cem, you're working we are originally from Germany. I also live in Germany and now based in Lissabon. I think this is also very important, and especially in Germany, you know how the Germans. I think very conservative and very cautious about new technology, implementing new technologies. I think this is maybe also and important that, as I said, this is my understanding because we also, because I'm on the other side. If we talk to different service providers, obviously this is a kind of that we have to be taught, or maybe we have to be advised, etc. I think this is very important that we that the customers get a good feeling about. Maybe they don't know what they want to have. They think about this. I want to achieve this goal, but they don't know how they will come to this goal. I think this is very important. That maybe storytelling is very important. Maybe you can elaborate about this. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe for German one, I will just start by Emma. I noticed that in Germany, in general, it's really relationship driven, right? You need to really earn the trust to really sell a deal, especially if it gets bigger. I also had 2 enterprise deals this year, which took way more time because there are just so many more people involved. You know this, Sash. It's just not comparable to a startup or a scale up if you sell. But what really comes down is the trust that you build. You need to pick like a champion, and then also the economic buyer. They need to trust you. They need to trust you as a person, and then they will listen to your solution. Then they will say, "All right, now show me what you got." Right? Yeah. And how do you start that? Of course, by building trust, with storytelling. You already said that. I mean, I said this at the beginning of this call. You do this nowadays by creating content, by really make your brand visible and vulnerable as well. Show them that there are real people behind it, and you need to create a sense of belonging, right? Almost every market nowadays is so competitive, and you need to break out from this noise.
Yeah, that's a great point you make, Zafar. So when I was in sort of cloud sales, working with large enterprises that had global presence, you had to work with different teams in different areas, and not just understand the cultural differences, but the sort of political things that affect your sales cycle. For example, Germany was a sovereign cloud region, as was Japan, as was China, and it's a very different conversation. I had to learn all of that. I have no idea. And then after a few meetings where you're like, oh, wow, I have no idea what they're talking about here. I need to do some more research before so it was always in my mind, I have to just ask questions. Let's see where this is going to go. And I learned so much. I had clients that worked out of India, I had a very large client who had one IT operation in India, one in Budapest. Very different kind of ways to work with them, but they were working towards the same goal. There's friction, there's all that, but it's a very important point you make. It's like, yeah, understanding the cultural differences builds trust, and having a basic understanding. And geopolitical stuff with like sovereign clouds was very difficult for me to understand. I don't come from a law background, but technology and that started meshing with the cloud. So you had to get a basic understanding of it so you can start a conversation. But just being curious about it super helps. Have an open mind, ask questions, and see where it goes.
Awesome. So we are a few minutes over time. So let me then just wrap up. Again, Mike, Cem, Sash, Emma, thank you so much for agreeing to do this and spending this hour and a half time with us, talking to us about the GTM, about strategy and the nuances, right? Some of the really fundamental stuff that you have been able to share with us, which is so important for anybody who is even starting off the journey or are already in an enterprise sales situation and want to kind of make sure that they leverage the most. So thank you guys again for joining us today. And it's great that, Mike, you have shared your LinkedIn. Cem, are you okay if people reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Well, yeah, of course. Sorry, I completely forgot.
Oh, that's good.
I'll put my link here. I think Zafar, we already connected, so that's cool.
Yes. I sent you an invite. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks again, guys, for joining us today, and thanks for having an amazing session. And thank you, audience, everybody who joined in.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chandra, for being an awesome moderator. Thank you, Chandra, for setting this up.